creature in the closet. Let's get it. Let's go.
I live in Limburg. That is the most southern province of the Netherlands.
I like the animation.
I'm 20 years old,
here.
and
Come on
all
now.
my life I've been wanting to work as a caretaker for people with a disability.
Very noble
Just
of
a
you.
few months ago,
I could never.
my dream came true. And now I work as a full-time caretaker at a living facility in Maastricht. At this facility, my story takes place.
Wait, I'm sorry. You wanted to take care of other people? People do that? That's a thing, fam? All right.
The living
okay.
facility is positioned just outside of Maastricht
I could
City.
use some care.
Before the building became a housing facility, it was a laundromat for the people living on that street.
Normie laundromat.
The facility consists of 3 houses that are internally connected. Each one can house 8 people. That makes a total of 24 patients that live in the facility. Each patient has his or her own room, ranging from small to large, to a separate bathroom and kitchen, to a shared bathroom in the hallway.
Oh, it's a nursery.
I first began
it's
working at
home.
this facility when I was just 17 years old,
All right,
as
so
an intern for my
illegal.
education.
That's what matters. She was not legal.
The story
At least
starts
in America.
2 years ago,
In Japan,
when
fair
one of
game,
my
fam.
patients that had lived there for 3 years moved out to live at another facility. His family claimed that the patient did not feel safe in his room because he would hear knocking coming from his closet. We made our apologies for the inconvenience.
It's probably
but
a
didn't
rat.
think much of it. 1 month later, when the room was cleaned and disinfected, a new patient came to live in the empty room. It was an elderly man, who I'll just refer to as Rick. Rick was a warm and kind-hearted man, who always loved talking about horses that he had as a child, as well as his great love for Russian opera. You'd always catch him sneaking into the kitchen to get a snack, or hear him sing opera. I must admit, he had quite a powerful and wonderful voice. At first, he would bid us a good night before he went to bed. But as time went by, Rick seemed more and more distressed. He didn't eat and didn't drink as much as he used to, and he lost weight at a troubling rate. He would sit quietly on the couch, staring blankly at nothing. When asked what was wrong, he would say that he had a terrible nightmare of some kind of creature lurking in his closet.
Oh, it's not a nightmare.
My colleagues and I debated whether or not he could be getting Alzheimer's.
No,
it would need testing.
Check the closet, please.
He had been tested, but nothing came out of those tests. Every night, Rick would scream us awake, and when we came into the room, he'd be sitting on his bed, trembling and pointing at the closet.
Check the closet, please.
He'd say that something crawled out of the closet and joined him in his bed. He described this creature as being skinny.
So no boobs. Well, that's too bad.
Even bony, with rotting meat hanging from its bones.
Okay, that's really bad now,
had
isn't
green
it?
eyes, the same color as his deceased mother, and huge fingers that ended in claws.
Alright, that's...
The creature's face was that of a human skull, those green eyes being nothing more than small lights, and a mouth that was filled with sharp teeth, like a crocodile.
Okay, so the BJ's off the table
creature
too.
would lie next to him in his bed,
there's no
wrapping its
purpose to-
claws around his body. Rick
Okay, but does it have a pussy though? I mean, you haven't told us that detail. Come on now.
described so vividly how he could smell the horrible scent of decay as the creature opened his mouth to whisper in his ear.
Get out. This is not your home.
Okay.
Rick would cover his ears as he said that.
He should leave. Oh, was that
Described so
piss?
vividly how he could smell the horrible scent of decay as the creature opened his mouth to whisper in his ear.
Get out. This is not your home.
Rick would cover his ears as he said that, and he would soil himself.
He pissed.
Poor Rick.
Poor
My
Rick.
colleague checked the closet,
Finally.
but there was nothing there, and the only thing we could say was that everything was going to be fine.
No, you move
Fast
him,
forward
fam.
about a month
Come
later,
on.
and Rick would wake up with markings all over his body. Deep scratches that appeared to be claw marks. There were even bite marks that were deeper and more animalistic than any human bite. Rick would not want to go into his room anymore, and he would bring his dinner to his room and place it at the door of his closet. My colleagues would take the food away, much to Rick's horror. He'd say that we would make the creature angry, and if it was angry, it would punish him.
Oh, God.
I feel so sorry for him, especially seeing the fear in his eyes as we scolded him and took away.
You're a caretaker and you're scolding him? I think you had the wrong dream the entire time. What is going on with
away
people,
the
man?
plate.
Let him leave.
There was 2 weeks of this, the same thing happening with Rick. One of my
Months,
closest
and then
colleagues
2 more
and I
weeks.
were
Okay,
working
so
the night
we've been
shift
here
one
for a
night.
while.
We were making our usual rounds, checking if everyone was
Grandma's
sleeping,
good.
and all the machinery was still up and running.
Heartbeat's good. Sorry, I'm burping.
That was when we heard a horrible, bone-chilling scream
Rick
echo
Ross.
through the building. The
Oh,
scream
that's
came from
creep-
Rick's
oh,
room.
God.
We stormed in, throwing the door open hard, revealing a horrible sight. Rick was lying on his back in his bed, while he was grasping for air. He was clawing at his neck and chest, ripping the flesh off, making bloody gashes all over his upper body. His bed and himself were covered in blood, and there was a trace of blood leading to his closet, which was now slightly opened. My colleagues dialed 112. That's the emergency line in the Netherlands. While I desperately tried to stop Rick from clawing, the only thing Rick did was scream, as if possessed, and stared at the ceiling. After
You
what
failed
seemed
as a
like forever,
caretaker.
the ambulance came and took Rick away.
She failed.
A week later,
You're a
we
failure.
received the sad news that Rick had died. The room once again was
not
left
Rick
empty.
Ross, okay.
The blood was cleaned up by a cleaning company and the room would be occupied soon enough. But even before the room was occupied,
You're gonna
I
kill
found another
somebody
patient
else?
standing in the room in front of that closet. "Hey, what are you doing in here?" I asked her as I walked into the room. The patient had stared at me and had muttered,
"This room should not be occupied ever again. It is angering him."
Ooh.
"Who's
Wisdom
him?"
from the wise.
I asked with a shaky voice.
You know who I mean. The devil who lived in the closet.
Oh,
After she said that,
no,
she
that's just
walked out
a
of the
quack.
room and
That's a
left
whole
me
quack lady,
breathless.
okay? I won't.
2 weeks
I wouldn't
later,
trust that.
that same patient moved into the room. I don't know why she was placed in that room,
The quack?
but I do know that she too changed. She can't remember her own name now, and all she does is sit in front of that closet, talking to the devil. I don't know what's going on at my work, but strange things keep happening. Colleagues tell stories of hearing footsteps in the hallways.
What's
Others
the devil
hear
doing in a
whispers
nursery?
the garden, and one even claimed to have been attacked by a shadow demon. Whatever's
Demon?
going on,
Dirty
one thing
demon?
is for sure. The creature in the closet is real, and he's
A dirty demon getting in the bed with the inmates, fam. Or, sorry, the old people at the nursery. I mean, yeah.
not
I don't
happy
have
about
respect
our
for
patient
nurseries. Let me
living
just
in
put that
his
out
room.
there. Okay. The horror
Back in the
story-
70s, when I was a
it doesn't even
teenager,
matter.
I had a girlfriend named Daisy who was a neighborhood babysitter.
Okay, let's get a good look now at the. Okay. Yes, very nice.
Everyone on my block used her to watch their kids when they would go out. There was no need for her to have a regular
She
job
could watch me all
because she
day.
made good money babysitting. I would usually stop by after the kids went to
Rich,
sleep
good looking.
and hang out with her
Come
until
on.
the parents got back,
Come on.
where I'd quietly make my exit and wait for her outside to walk her home. I remember that this was a couple of days after Halloween 1977. I'll never forget that year's Halloween, because that was the night I was clipped by a drunk driver while I was riding my bike. They got
Oh, it's not funny. That's not funny, but of all the reasons, I remember that at Halloween because I was ran over.
I ended up going
I'm
to
sorry.
jail, but that's another story. The point is, I would not be visiting
okay.
Daisy that
As-
night
as
because
you
of my
would.
broken arm and fractured rib, but she said that she would call me after the kids went to sleep. So I spent the
He
evening
never
in my
got that
living room
call.
watching
She
television,
didn't call.
waiting for Daisy to call me. I would say it was around 8:30 when the phone rang.
Okay, maybe she
Hello.
called him.
Hey,
Okay.
it's me.
What's up, babe? Did the little rascal finally pass out?
Oh.
Yeah, Mrs. Clark let him eat all of his leftover candy before I got here, and he was bouncing off the walls for a while.
Sounds like fun.
Totally.
Keep that bullshit to
But
yourself.
It's
Ask me
pretty
about my
funny
arm.
to see little Dennis when he's all hyper. He talks so fast that it
She
sounds
still
like
didn't
he's
ask him about
speaking
his
another
arm.
language.
Is that so?
Yeah, but anyway, how's your arm?
It still sucks. Itches like
No.
crazy. And when I try to
Let's talk a little
scratch
bit more
at it,
about
I end up
Dennis.
moving it. And that's when I feel the pain come back.
Ooh, jeez.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Such
I'm
a
just grateful
real
it's my
reaction.
left
Come
arm.
on.
And that my dad does a really bad job at hiding his dirty magazines.
19
Oh,
plus.
shut up,
okay.
you perv.
So, what are you wearing?
I'm not answering that. Use your imagination.
Be careful what you wish for. I
What?
might just.
Shh. I think I heard something outside.
Very funny, Daisy.
No, I'm serious.
Don't go
I think I just heard
Don't-
someone walking around outside.
I could tell by the sound of her voice.
Call the
Daisy
call the
was
police.
a little creeped out.
Yes.
Maybe the Clarks are home?
No, they said they wouldn't be back until 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'm staying the night here.
Okay, don't freak out.
Oh, she's got
Maybe
a
it's
stalker.
just a stray cat or something.
It's a stalker.
It didn't sound like a cat. Just stay on the phone with me while I go check it out.
Grab the guns, call
Okay.
the goons, fam. Grab the gun, call the
A
goons.
couple of
Do it.
seconds went by, and the next thing I heard was the sound of glass shattering followed by Daisy screaming at the top of her lungs.
What?
And the
Joe,
line
the
went
plot.
dead.
The plot thickens.
I quickly got up, left my house, and made my way over to the Clark's residence as quickly as I could.
Okay,
They
I
lived at the
wouldn't.
very end of the block, so it took me
Oh.
about 5 minutes to get there. When I
Oh.
arrived, the front door was open, and I could
No,
see
don't
Daisy
go in,
lying
fam.
face down on the living room floor in a pool of blood.
Oh, she's dead.
I quickly
She's
got to
dead.
her and turned her over with my
Oh,
good
you
arm.
touched her?
She had been stabbed in the chest. At first, I thought Daisy was dead, but I soon realized she was just unconscious. I applied pressure to her wound and looked behind me to see that
Oh.
Dennis was by the stairs. He had a look of absolute terror on his face.
Oh, okay.
Dennis, buddy, I need you to call the police. Tell them that someone broke in and attacked Daisy.
Ask the
I actually knew
child.
Dennis very well. My dad and his dad were very good friends. So Dennis wasn't afraid of me, and he also wasn't a complete moron like most kids on my block.
Okay, well, okay, I take
He
that
did
back.
what he was told. While I was trying to stop the bleeding, I happened to see that one of the large living room windows had been completely shattered. That was where the attacker must have entered, and then left through the front door. The police
Who-
and
who
ambulance
just
showed up a
comes
few minutes
over,
later, and Daisy was
Stabs
rushed to the
babysitter
emergency
and
room.
leaves.
The police contacted the Clarks
doesn't
to
make
explain the
sense at all.
situation, and Dennis ended up staying at my house until they got back. When Daisy finally came to, she was hysterical and could not tell the police any details about her attacker. It was completely random. Nothing like this had ever happened in my
Okay.
neighborhood before.
I'm basically getting
This
debunked.
incident pretty much destroyed our entire community. Nobody trusted anyone after this. A rumor even started that I was the one who attacked Daisy that night. Unfortunately, Daisy ended up suffering from mental complications brought on by the trauma of this event. Our relationship fell apart, and she moved away a year later. I'm sad to say that she developed a drug addiction, which led to her taking her own life in 1983. The police never found out who the intruder was or what his motives were. Nothing from the house had been taken. It's truly a shame that they never caught the person. Because of their actions, they destroyed a wonderful community. And I can't imagine the anguish that Daisy's parents went through watching their daughter turn from a happy, normal girl into an emotional wreck. It's sad,
God. Yeah,
but this
that's
is the
real
world we
sad.
live in. I don't
Okay,
advocate that you live your life in
reality check,
fear.
damn it.
That's not healthy. But be aware that there are people out there who are just pure evil, and sometimes they don't have a reason for doing the horrible things they do.
What? All right. Okay. I give that like a proper 6 out of 10. It's not, it didn't give me the goosebumps. It was a lot more realistic. I'll give it that. But fam, come on now. Come on now. My neighbor Tom. Let's get this.
Back when we moved into our house, we were introduced to all of our neighbors by them coming to our house with cookies or brownies. Kind of like they do
heavy
in the
southern
movies.
accent with this one.
This was a nice, quiet, middle-class neighborhood.
I wouldn't trust
made up
those
of mostly
brownies.
older white people and new families.
I would absolutely not
I
trust those
mentioned that
brownies.
because we were the only black family in the neighborhood.
I
No
would-
black wives, husbands, not even adopted children.
Do not touch
We
the
didn't really
brownies.
find it strange, though. It was just very clear that we were different. I was about 13 years old at the time, and my brother was 15. Our backyard was about a half an acre and is fenced,
Damn.
but it's also connected to 2 other houses' backyards.
Okay.
Each one is about half the size
Getting
of
that
ours, but
geography.
we all have separating fences.
Very nice.
So to paint a picture, there's a T-shaped fence separating our backyards.
Okay.
The house to the left was the home of an older man named Tom.
Tom.
He kind of reminded me of Willie
Oh.
Nelson, but without the cool pigtails. He liked to be outside shirtless and usually with a denim vest, no matter what the weather was.
Mm-hmm.
He was a pretty well-built man, but visibly kind of frail. We actually found him to be quite funny, in a creepy old guy type of way. As I got older, he had started to make comments. I played in the backyard with my
Right,
dogs
so
a
she's
lot,
been with him
and
for-
Tom
for-
could see me
oh.
in his living room window that faced his backyard.
Okay.
Whenever I glanced over, I could always see him in the window, just standing there watching me. When he noticed that I saw him, he'd come out and talk to me. I would try to get away before he would come out, but
Okay.
sometimes I was just too slow.
Yeah, okay, this isn't all that weird. I mean, I've done this. I've got to be honest. There are old people back where I lived, and you just kind of have to, like, when I'd go to the neighborhood like mailbox, and I saw this other old guy coming, I'd be like, yeah, let's quicken up our pace here, because when they want to talk, they want to talk, okay? And I'm not saying like, I tried to, I absolutely did try to avoid them. But like only because they would stay there out in the sun next to the mailbox for like half an hour talking about their army days. I was just not interested.
I didn't want to
in
make
the
it too
army,
obvious, so
man.
I would just
It's not-
walk.
let
But if
it
I
go.
didn't make it inside, he'd yell for me to come back.
Okay, that's a
I
bit
never got
extra.
too
They didn't
close
do
to the
that
fence,
much to
though.
me, but
I'd speak from a distance.
they wouldn't like call me to come back.
He would ask
but,
me
yeah,
about
we would
school,
talk.
what grade I was in, tell me I was pretty, and ask if I was old enough to have a boyfriend. Also, if I had an older sister or older friends that looked like me.
Oh,
It was pretty weird,
okay.
but I'd just laugh it off.
Oh, that's very weird.
But after a
fam.
few questions, he'd stop talking to me and just stare at me, silently.
Okay, old
I
people
would
do
always
that
give an
too.
excuse about needing to go inside, and he would nod and stand at the fence and just watch me walk back into the house. This kind of thing happened almost weekly. My mom really loves to decorate, so she changes the house decor every few months or so. It's pretty annoying, actually. During one of her designing sprees, she had decided to get a new sliding glass door for the back porch, which required
As
her
you
to
would.
take the curtains down in the living room.
Okay.
It took forever to get them installed, but she figured that there was no point in putting the curtains back up if we'd have to take them back down again. Fine,
Where
I
are we
guess.
going with this?
Now, our family TV was in the living room. I didn't have a TV
Come
in my
on now,
room,
please.
so I'd often watch TV late into the night in the living room with my brother. One night, my brother went to bed pretty early, so I decided to watch TV by myself that night.
Mm-hmm.
Right around midnight or so, I had turned off the TV so I could go to bed.
Oh.
I got up from the
this
couch,
is
turned off
getting
the light, and then turned around to see another light on.
Oh.
Not in my house, but in Tom's house.
Oh.
It was in his living room, and he was there, just standing in the window watching me. I later told my parents about it, but they just shrugged it off. I'm a pretty
Another
anxious
old guy,
soul,
just
so
another
I
old
often
guy.
just
Come
chalk
on
things
now.
up
He probably
to my
lives
anxiety.
alone.
Fine.
Doesn't have anybody else to talk to.
Not too long afterwards, though, my dogs had started to get sick. I would take them out to play, and they'd start throwing up or have diarrhea.
Tom is
We
evil.
knew that it
He's
wasn't their
killing the
food
dogs
because
to
we
try
didn't
to
give
get
them
in.
anything new.
Oh.
We also threw away the dog treats that we recently bought, just in case that was the problem.
Oh, yo,
But it didn't stop.
Tom is doing this.
I had started to notice that every time I let them out alone, they'd always run straight over to Tom's fence,
he's
jumping up and down and
them,
wagging their tails.
Bro.
He would slowly walk outside, reach over the fence, and then feed them his treats, which was really odd because Tom didn't even have a dog. I told my parents, and my dad went to talk to him, telling him the dogs were getting sick. Tom had apologized, and he had also stopped feeding them, and they got better. A few weeks later, I was coming home from school. My brother was in the grade above me, and I was a senior, so he was in college at the time. Whenever I got home, no one else would be home for a few more hours. I had a routine. I would put my book bag downstairs, then change clothes, let the dogs out of their cages on the porch, get a snack, and then let them back in. For some strange reason, I was just unusually excited to see my dogs that day. So instead of going upstairs, I went straight to the back porch. I had got to the door to open it, and I then saw Tom just sitting on the ground right in front of the dogs' cages. I froze. He didn't see me though. I had looked over to see if the door was locked, but it wasn't. I had began to lock it as slowly as possible so it
won't
didn't
even
make a
matter.
noise, but it did.
Oh.
Tom then looked over and he saw me standing there. I ran upstairs to go call my parents. My mom's a nurse, so she didn't have her phone on. And my dad just never answered the phone. I didn't really think that it was serious enough to call the police, so instead I just
So you
hid.
should have called the police.
After about a moment though,
and
I
hide in
heard
the
Tom
most
knock on the
obvious
door.
place.
It wasn't loud or aggressive though. It was almost like friendly, like he just wanted to talk. I tried my dad's phone yet again, and he then answered. I was crying hysterically, and I had then told him that Tom was on the porch. He said he'd head home, but he was about an hour away. I just sat in my room, just waiting for my dad.
Police.
The knocking stopped.
You
All I
called the
remember was that my
police at
dad
this
got
point.
home
This
and
is
Tom was gone.
trespassing.
I don't really know what happened between Tom and my dad, but he did stop coming outside and talking to me. He never did stop watching though, always standing in his living room. Sometimes I'd see him through the window and he would wave at me, but always with the light on, just so I knew that he was still there. It was pretty creepy.
Dude, that's really creepy. What? Oh God, no! That story. That just makes me feel like crap. I don't like that story at all. It could have been so good. The plot could have been really nice. I don't like it. I'd enjoy it. 2 out of 10.
I grew
right.
up in what people would consider a bad household. My mom and dad were in a bad relationship, and they did nothing but argue every day. My
Yo,
mom would complain that
That
my
was
dad
Drake's
would stick in the
household, and look how Drake came up, fam. Okay.
basement
doesn't
almost
mean
every
anything.
day and never
It's about
spent
your
any time with
willpower.
me. And my dad would
I have
always
no
have the
idea what
same
I'm talking
response,
about.
that he's doing research down there. The only problem was that we were prohibited from going down to the basement.
Yo,
Three
your dad
lots.
is his dad is working on the Attack on Titan. He's working on the Titan blood, fam.
Were
That's
built
how it
into the
is.
basement door. And he kept his one key on his old
You're
key
about
ring.
to be Aaron Yeager.
The
You're about
key
to
had
get
a torn
founding
blue
Titan
sticker
for
at the
your 18th
bottom of it
birthday.
with a brown rusty tip.
Dude,
However, my mom finally got a hold of it somehow. And that same day when I came home from school, Dad suddenly told me she left us for another man. He seemed truly broken and sunk in his misery.
Oh,
So
he
I
killed
tried
her.
acting,
turned her into a
pretending
Titan.
to be normal at first. But I couldn't stop crying like a baby when I finally got back in my room. After a few months of emotional breakdowns, my dad finally got over it. Furthermore, he started to visit the basement more consistently to the point where I would feel like I lived alone. I kept thinking my dad was working very hard, since I saw him being very distraught after coming upstairs from the basement. I thought
the
everything was
body?
fine until I started hearing noises at night. They weren't just regular noises. It was kind of someone's crying and scream of agony. But the most disturbing
Wait,
sound
the
of all
mom's
was the sound
alive.
of growling, like some kind of beast would exist down in the basement. The next morning, I complained to my dad, but he acted like he had no idea what I was talking about as he walked past me to get ready for work.
With blood on your sleeve?
So I just shook it off, assuming that he was watching some horror movie down there, or if I was just imagining the whole thing. I went back to my room.
Dude, are you
As it was the
stupid,
weekend,
bro?
I was ready to catch up on some Saturday morning cartoons. I turned on my TV, and as I got ready to change the channel, I heard a familiar name. The news reporter was naming over 40 missing people in our town, and my mom was one of those
They're literally all in your basement, dude. All of them are in your basement
names
right
as
now,
they
dude.
briefly showed her picture and information.
Release them.
I was confused about who would file a missing person report for her, because my grandparents both died in a tragic car accident years ago. She had no siblings, and my dad told me she left us for another man. I wanted to inform my dad,
Daddy.
but soon I was concerned it would make him depressed again. And in a way, I was still angry at her for
the
leaving
plot is
us.
thickening, fam.
So I ignored it and changed the channel.
What?
A few minutes later, my dad came in to tell me he was leaving for work. He gave me a kiss on my forehead and informed me that he'd be back later that night. After he left, I invited my best friend Austin to come over. He then arrived shortly after, and we played a game on my PlayStation. As we were about to plunge into the game, we suddenly heard a strange noise coming from the basement. What was that? Austin asked, being confused.
Your mom.
I don't know. My dad does some kinds of experiments down there. It's probably a rat or something. Austin looked amused. No, dude, we can't go down there. My dad said so, I said quickly, bringing an end to Austin's excitement. It has no reason to doubt that Austin was disappointed. Then he asked for something to drink, so I went to the kitchen to get some juice for him. However, I was hit with a foul odor of something rotting as soon as I arrived in the kitchen. I looked around to see what could be the cause of the smell, and I found that the basement door was cracked open. I went to close it, but the curiosity got the best of me. So I called Austin to help me investigate. We darted down the stairs to the basement, clenching our noses at that horrible smell. It was dark until Austin found a light switch and quickly flicked it on. However, we had to regret our decision instantly after we saw the inside of the basement. There were people hanging from hooks with random limbs missing. As we were standing in horror, Austin clenched my shirt strongly. I could see the piles of feces and human remains contained within certain sections of the room. But the most disturbing and disgusting sight of all was the cage in the dark right corner of the room. The inside of it seemed to be a person sleeping at first, but as it looked up, I quickly realized that thing was not a person. What is that? Austin shouted, shaking with fear. I ignored his question. To be more specific, I couldn't answer. That thing was indescribably frightening. It looked like a deformed human with its mouth filled with crooked and ragged teeth covering a majority of its face. Its face pointed outward with creases where the nose should be.
This is obviously fake.
The eyes were bulging out of its head as it fixated its glance toward Austin and me. Food, it said to us slowly with excitement and a malicious voice. Then it started clawing at the iron bars of the cage with its needle-like hands. I sat there in horror until Austin grabbed my wrist. We ran up the stairs scrambling for the escape and shut the door. After I made sure it was perfectly locked, I saw Austin sitting on the carpet floor with his knees to his chest.
You didn't see his mom, though.
Once we had a few moments of silence, I then finally realized what really happened to my mom and those missing people in our town. At that instant, Austin muttered like this. Your dad, he was feeding those people to that thing. Now, what should I do now?
Call the police, fam. Call them. What do you mean? What am I supposed to do? Okay, last one. How long have we been at this?
It was one night. I was drinking out with my two
last
friends
one,
when
fam.
we left the bar after drinking and chattering for a long time. The last bus had left already. Well, I guess we have to stay a night somewhere, one of my friends told me, and we had no choice but to stop at the motel and sleep together. We lay side by side in bed, and it was about 2 hours after that everyone
That's kind of hot, not gonna lie. Yeah, I'm saying.
suddenly woke me. The one who was sleeping in the middle suddenly woke me up with a frightened face. "Hey, let's get out of here right now," she said. "What? We just lied down," I grumbled. But she said this again and again in haste. "Please, let's go. I'll tell you the reason later. If you want to stay here, then I'll leave alone." I felt something uneasy about her reaction, so I woke up and shook another friend's shoulder lying next to me.
I would.
He didn't wake up no matter how many times I woke him up.
Leave
Since
him.
we were all drunk and couldn't communicate properly with each other, I finally decided to go back with her first, leaving him in the motel. While I was just killing my time at a convenience store nearby until the time of the first bus, my cell phone suddenly rang. It was a phone call from him who was at the motel. Wasn't he sleeping? Thinking like that, I answered the phone and he screamed at once, "Why do you guys leave me alone in that room?" Oh no, he must have seen it too, she muttered blankly. Later, my friend said that they saw something in the room. As one of my friends felt thirsty during sleeping, she woke up and went to the refrigerator to get some water. And at that moment, a woman with long hair suddenly appeared from the ceiling, hanging upside down. Her face was covered with blood. She heard a voice from her that seemed to appeal to something, but she couldn't understand what it meant. Her body was so stiff that she couldn't move, as if she had been paralyzed. However, the moment she turned her eyes, the woman disappeared and she was finally able to move again. Early that day, I joined with my boyfriend and went home right away, but I couldn't get rid of my uncomfortable feeling. And I couldn't get over it until the next day around noon. So we ended up heading back to the motel to complain to the custodian. However, the police and police cars were crowded around the hotel when we got there. We found the custodian in front of the hotel entrance and approached him. "What's going on here?" Anyway, I'd like to tell you that we are very upset and unpleasant that we'd seen something here yesterday. While I was explaining about this, his gloomy face was slowly contorted, and he slowly opened his mouth when I finished talking. There was a woman who was killed last night in another room after being hit on the head by a baseball bat. The room where she died was the one right above where we were asleep yesterday. And my friend saw a woman's ghost in the ceiling almost at the same time as the woman was killed. The moment we heard the story, we got goosebumps and came back home hurriedly.
You know, let me speak to the manager about this.
Show up to ask us for help.
What kind of
desperately.
bullshit?
That's what I think to this day.
All right. On that 5 out of 10 note, let's end the video there. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to smash that subscribe button. Really helps grow a small channel like mine. And if you guys want to see anything else in the future, let me know in the comment section below. I'm going to see you guys in the next one, probably tomorrow. So take it easy. Peace. Oh, if you want to check out my tech channel, check out Chilled Fossil, by the way. Arigato.